Hello all.
Vishnu. Okay.
Yeah, okay. A warm welcome to all. You need of ASAP on operation of our system under our module 5, semester 6 of engineering. The session is Dr. Maya G, Mechanical and Electronics Engineering. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vishnu. I
Thank
hope
you,
I
ma'am.
am audible.
Yes, ma'am. There's an introduction. There's an instruction for our students. That is, the session will be of 1 hour, out of which they can ask questions in between. And the first 20 minutes will be presentation, and we have arranged next 10 minutes for question and answer session. Then again, we will continue for another 20 minutes with the presentation. And at the end, last 10 minutes will again be used for question and answer session. The attendees can ask questions using the QA option available at the bottom of your screen. You can ask a question using the QA option available at the bottom of your screen. Hope this is clear. So now we are moving on to our section. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vishnu. So I'll be handling the session on economic operation of power system. So what do you mean by economic operation? Let me see. Yeah, Vishnu, I think I'm audible, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Audible. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Yes, ma'am.
So we'll go into economic operation of power system. What is economic operation? So whenever we transmit power from a generating station to a load center, we always look, the utility always look into the economic aspect, that is minimum operating cost of the generation. Okay, so economic load dispatch is performed to determine the optimal scheduling of generation. The optimal scheduling of the generation to minimize the operating cost of generation for a given load. As load varies in an hourly basis or day wise, we have to schedule the generation so that the cost is minimum. So just we have to schedule before we dispatch the load, as well as while we are connected to the. So there are two steps involved in economic load dispatch, namely the unit commitment or pre-dispatch problem and the online load dispatch problem. So unit commitment problem, as it is actually selecting the optimal generation to meet the load of the system over a required period. Over a required period, also, it will provide a specified margin of reserve. Okay, so unit commitment is a pre-dispatch problem. That is, before meeting the load, we'll do the unit commitment problem so that optimally the loads are scheduled. Optimally, the loads are scheduled to meet a load. The generations are scheduled to meet a load over a required period, and it will always have a reserve which is specified. Whereas in online load dispatch, the distribution among the generating units are done to reduce the total cost. The generating units that we consider is only which are parallel in the system. That is the generators which are connected in the system, okay, which are operating in the system. So in online dispatch, it will consider whether the system generating unit is operating or not. In unit commitment method, this is the load dispatch will be done without considering whether the generating unit is operating or not. If it is installed in the system, will be considering that particular generation for unit commit. Okay. So generation will be meeting the load, but there are certain constraints in scheduling this particular generation to meet the load. So what are the constraints? We have equality constraints and inequality constraints. The equality constraint is, as I specified, the generation should be meeting the load. But we know that our power system is not pure. That is, there are certain losses in the system. So the generation should be meeting the load as well as the losses. So PD represents the load and PL represents the losses in the system. Okay. So whenever the generation meets the load plus losses, that is a equality constraint. Whereas inequality constraints are also there in our power system. For example, the generation constraints. That is, we always have a generator. We have a generator. Then there is a maximum and minimum limit which the generator can generate, as well as there is a maximum and minimum limit of voltage which is permissible in the system. And tap changing transformers, in that tap changing transformers also, there is a maximum and minimum tap changer settings allotted. So these are the inequality constraints: the generator constraint, voltage constraints, tap changing, tap settings, etc. But we can classify this inequality constraints into hard type and soft type. What are hard type? Say, for example, the tap changing, tap settings. There are certain definite and specific tap settings provided in any on-load tap changing transformer. We can take that particular settings in. Whereas for a voltage constraint, the voltage limits are prescribed. Say 0.5 per unit below and 0.5 per unit above the limit, above the range is permissible. So it can vary continuously. It can have any value between the prescribed limits. That is called the soft type. Soft type, which have some flexibility associated with it, like the nodal voltage. That is, we can vary, the voltage may vary from a lower limit to an upper limit. Within this range, any value can be taken. Okay. So we have the constraints. We have the equality and inequality constraints. We'll be meeting the load and losses by using the generations which are available. Subjected to these constraints, we have to minimize the cost. So first of all, we have to know what is the cost function. So cost of generation. Cost of generation of a unit can be written as, say, I have written the expression 1. We know that the cost of generation of a particular unit, it depends on the fuel cost, the wages that is given, maintenance cost, etc. So as the generation increases, say I'm discussing the thermal unit, as the generation increases, we need to input more and more coal. That is, more and more fuel is required. That means more and more costs will be incurred. Okay. So when generation increases, the cost will also increase. We can draw the cost curve. Approximately, the cost curve can be shown by this figure. This figure shows the cost curve. So it can be almost approximated as a parabolic equation, which is given by equation number 1. There is a cost of a particular unit depending on the generation of that particular unit. Okay. The slope of this curve is very important in our optimal studies. That is, the slope of this cost curve is known as the incremental fuel cost. As we know that in a thermal unit, the most important, the cost is mainly dependent on the fuel cost, not on what wages or maintenance. The fuel cost is the most important. So the cost is more, cost can be called as fuel cost also. Okay, cost function can be called as fuel cost function. So the slope of this cost function is called as the incremental fuel cost. That is dC1, dCi by dPg. What is the change in the cost for a change in generation? What is the change in the cost for a change in generation? That is the incremental fuel cost. And we can get it by differentiating equation number 1. So differentiating equation number 1 will get the incremental fuel cost, which is represented by IFC as 2AI PGI plus BI, where AI and BI are constants. Okay, so for a particular unit, these are the cost function and incremental fuel cost function. Now, if we are having more number of units or more number of generators in a particular unit, then each generator will be having a limit, that is minimum and maximum limit for generation. That is given by equation number 3. A unit will be having a minimum, it has to generate a minimum value that is given by PGI min, and the maximum value that a generator can generate is given by PGI max. Okay. So this will be applied for each and every generators which are connected in the unit. If there are n number of units, n equations will be there. And our main objective is to minimize the cost function. So minimizing the cost function. For n number of generators, n number of cost functions will be there. So if we are writing it as a summation, we have sigma I is equal to 1 to n Ci PGI, where Ci PGI is the cost function of IN in the system. Okay. So now we are dealing with the optimal scheduling without considering the losses. Okay. So if we assume that the losses are 0, then the equality constraints can be written as the generation, sum of all the generation should be meeting the demand or load. So that is an equality constraint. Generation should be meeting the load. So generation minus load is equal to this. We have the objective as equation number 4 and the constraint by equation number 5. So this is a constraint optimization problem. So which can be solved by Lagrangian function. We can form the Lagrangian function by using the cost function, that is objective function, minus a Lagrangian multiplier lambda into the constraint function. Okay. So this gives the Lagrangian function. Lagrangian function is the optimization function minus Lagrangian multiplier into the constraint function, which is given by equation number 6. So we have to find out the minimum value of the cost, and that is the Lagrangian function, we have to minimize the Lagrangian function. What are the variables in that particular Lagrangian function? We have only one variable, that is the generation. Okay. One variable means the generation of each and every unit. PG1 up to PGN, we are having the variables. But PD is a constant. That is a load demand. Okay. So PGs are the variables and PD is a constant. So we will be differentiating the Lagrangian function with respect to the generations and equating that to 0. We'll find out the condition for the minimization. So finding out the differentiation, we'll get the first function CI PGI. It is dependent on PGI. So it is so we can write that the derivative as dCi by dPGI and minus lambda into derivative of PGI with PGI is 1 and derivative of PD is 0. So we'll be getting the different derivative of L with respect to PGI as dCi by dPGI equal to lambda. Okay, that is equation number 8. This equation will be for each and every unit. That is, if we are considering I is equal to 1, the cost function of first should be differentiated with respect to cost, the generation of the first unit. That will be equal to lambda, and all other cost functions will be the derivative of all other cost functions will be. So we'll get the expression as dCi by dPGI, which is equal to dCi C2 by dPG2, etc. will be equal to lambda. This is called the coordination equation. That is, we have used the constraint to optimize or minimize the cost. That is why it is called the coordination equation. Here, dCi dC1 by dPG1, as we know, it is the incremental fuel cost. dCi by dPGI can be written as incremental fuel cost of the ith generator. Okay. So we have the coordination equation, and that is equation number 9, and we also have the power equation, that is power balance equation, that is generation minus demand is equal to 0. By using these two equations, we can solve any optimal scheduling problem which neglects the losses. So let us see a problem based on this. So here is a problem. That is, assume that this is a university question. So I'll discuss how we can apply the coordination equation along with the constraint to solve this particular problem. So assume that the fuel input in BTU is called as British Thermal Unit. So the fuel input, the British BTU per hour for unit 1 and 2 are given by the equations F1 and F2. The maximum and minimum loads on the units are 100 megawatt and 10 megawatt respectively. That is the limit of generation. P1 and P2 are the generations of the two units, and the limits for these generations are 100 and 10 megawatt. Maximum is 100 and minimum is 10 megawatt respectively. Determine the minimum cost of generation when the following, that is shown in figure, is supplied. The cost of function is ₹2 per million BTU. Determine the savings per day when compared to the equal share. So first of all, let us determine the minimum cost of generation for a particular load. So we can see the load curve in figure. So there are two loads, that is 50 megawatt for 12 hours and 150 megawatt for another 12 hours. So we'll consider these two loads separately as case 1 and case 2. Okay. So we have the cost functions. Cost function. Actually, the fuel input is given as F1. So that fuel input into the cost will give the cost function. Okay. F1 into the cost will give the cost function. So F1 is 8P1 plus 0.024 P1 square plus 80 into 10 raised to 6 is a cost fuel input function, and cost is given as rupees 2 per million BTU. So here 2 per million BTU is there, so that 10 raised to 6 gets cancelled. Cost function is obtained, C1 and C2. Now from this we'll find out the incremental fuel cost of the two generators. Incremental fuel cost is dC1 by dP1 and dC2 by dP2. Derivative of cost function gives a incremental fuel cost function. So it is also obtained. So we have the incremental fuel cost, and we have as first case we have the load as 50 megawatt, 50 megawatt. So the power balance equation is the generation P1 plus P2 is equal to the load, that is 50, and the coordination equation is the incremental fuel cost of first unit is equal to incremental fuel cost of second unit. Okay, so we have these two equations. We have these two equations. The equation this particular equation constraint equation, that is equality constraint equation, and the coordination equation. By solving these two equations, we'll have two unknowns, two equations we can solve for P1 and P2. We'll get P1 as 15.625 and P2 as 34.375. So we have to see whether this result P1 and P2 values of P1 and P2 is crossing the limits or not. Our limits are 100 megawatt and 10 megawatt. Maximum is 100 and minimum is 10. Both P1 and P2 are within the limit. Okay, we can see that both P1 and P2 are within the limits. So substituting this P1 and P2 in the cost function, that is C1 and C2, will get the values for the cost of generation of 15.625 megawatt by the unit 1 and cost of generation of 34.375 by unit 2 as given in the slide. Okay, so we have the generation schedule for the first load. Now we have to find the generation schedule for the second load, that is 150 megawatt. So when the load was 150 megawatt, the coordination equation remains the same. That is, incremental fuel cost of first unit is equal to incremental fuel cost of second unit. But the constraint equation is P1 plus P2 is equal to 150. P1 plus P2 is equal to 150. So constraint equation is different. So we have two equations, the coordination equation and constraint equation. The two unknowns, P1 and P2, we can solve these two unknowns for these two unknowns, and we'll get it as 78.126 and 71.874. So we'll check for the limits also. Both P1 and P2 are within limits, that is 100 and 10. Those are the maximum and minimum limits. Both P1 and P2 are within these two limits. So we'll find out the cost function. The case is if P1 or P2 P2 is beyond certain limit. Say, if after solving these two equations, if I had obtained P1 as 125 megawatt, then when we check for the limits, P1 max is given as 100 megawatt. Now P1 that we obtained is 125. So P1 is exceeding the upper limit, maximum limit. Then we have to take P1 for the calculation of cost as P1 has to be taken as 100 megawatt. That is the limit which is crossed by the optimal scheduling that we obtained. Okay. After solving the coordination equation along with the load, we got, if we had obtained as 125 megawatt, we have to check this scheduling, that is this result with the limits, and we found that it is crossing the maximum limit of 100 megawatt. So we'll take P1 as that particular limit, the limit which is being crossed. Okay. Then we have to calculate the cost of generation. So whenever a generation crosses a limit, we have to assume the crossed limit as a schedule and find out the cost function. So we have the cost function for, now we have the cost function for both 150 megawatt as well as 50 megawatt. Now the total cost of generation of these, total cost of generation is sum of all these costs. That is for 50 megawatt and for 150 megawatt. That is a total cost. Okay, but our units are operating at 50 megawatt for 12 hours and 150 megawatt for 12 hours. So total cost per day is the sum of these costs into 12. Okay, into 12. Since the load are met for 12 hours in a day, as we can see from the load curve which was already given in the question. So total cost per day is obtained as 5264.9.61. So first part of our problem is over. Now regarding the second part. The second part is the cost, determine the savings per day when compared with the equal sharing. So first of all, we have to find out what is the cost when the loads are equally shared by the two units. So when the loads are 50 megawatt, when the load is 50 megawatt, and the loads are equally shared, P1 and P2 will be half of 50, which is 25. And when P1 and P2 are 25 megawatt, the cost will be, cost can be obtained from the cost function, and it is obtained as 590 and 590. Okay, and when the load is 150 megawatt and the equally shared, P1 and P2 will be 150 by 2, that is 75, and the cost values will be obtained as 1360 and 1590 by substituting 75 in the cost functions. Okay. So now, what is the total cost for equal sharing? Total cost for equal sharing is sum of all these four costs. Okay, sum of all those four costs. But our loads are operating for 12 hours each. That is 50 megawatt for 12 hours and 150 megawatt for 12 hours. So we have to multiply by 12 hours. It will give the cost for a day, and it is obtained as 52800. We can see that this cost, when it is equally shared, the cost is coming as 5280. and when it is optimally shared, it is 52649.6. We can see that optimal sharing will be always having a less cost than compared to any other schedule. And the savings can be obtained by just finding out the difference between these two codes. So it is obtained as 150.39 rupees per day. That is a savings. So there is a problem when we neglect the losses in the system. Whenever we include any loss, the loss has to be met by the generation. Losses along with the demand has to be met by the generation. So when we deal with the optimal scheduling with losses, the constraint is different. That is, the generation should meet both demand and loss. Whereas the objective function is the same, that is, the cost of generation is sum of cost of generation of each and every unit. Okay. So we have these this particular objective function and constraint. But the losses, what about the losses? The losses in the system, as we know, it depends on the generation. That is, whenever we are meeting a load from a generator, the power will be flowing from the generator through the transmission line to the load. So it will be, the losses will be a function of each and every generator which is connected in the system. So we can write P loss as a function of the generators or power generated in by each and every unit of this system. So we have the constraint and the objective function will form the Lagrangian function by using the Lagrangian multiplier, and it is obtained as equation number 13. So only difference is in this constraint. The Lagrangian function is formed. For minimizing this function, we have to find out the derivative of this Lagrangian function with respect to the variable that is generation. So that is equated to 0. We'll get the condition for minimization. Okay. So when we differentiate this L Lagrangian function with respect to the generation, we'll get the Lagrangian derivative of cos function Ci by dPgi, whereas the derivative of the constraint is lambda is constant, so lambda outside, and derivative of generation with respect to generation is 1. Derivative of the demand with respect to generation is 0, as demand is not varying. And the derivative of loss, as I have already mentioned, losses are functions of generation. Okay, losses are function of generation. So derivative of losses with respect to generation is represented as dou P loss by dou Pg. We'll deal with this function P loss later. So we had obtained this equation number 50. That equation can be rewritten as taking this bracket to the other side. We'll get it as dCi by dPgi divided by 1 minus dou P loss by dou Pgi. This is equal to lambda. This is called as the exact coordination equation. Since we have considered the losses in this network, this is called as exact coordination equation. And here, this particular term, that is dou P loss by dou Pgi, is called as incremental transmission loss. That is, what is the change in the loss whenever there is a change in the generation. Incremental transmission loss. What is the increase in the transmission loss when there is an increase in the generation? Okay. So this is a exact coordination equation which is given by 16, or it can be rewritten as equation number 70 as dCi by dPgi, as we know it is a incremental fuel cost, or simply the incremental cost function, incremental cost, and the denominator is 1 minus incremental transmission loss. Okay. So it can be 16 can be rewritten as equation number 17, which is also called as the exact coordination equation. Here, 1 divided by this term, 1 divided by 1 minus dou P loss by dou PGI. 1 divided by this term is called as the penalty factor. Penalty factor. Okay. So that is written as Li. Penalty factor is written as Li. dCi by dPgi, which is incremental fuel cost or incremental cost into the penalty factor. Into the penalty factor will be equal to lambda. Okay. Incremental fuel cost into penalty factor will be equal to lambda. Penalty factor is equal to 1 divided by 1 minus incremental transmission cost. Okay. Penalty factor, as the only difference between the exact coordination equation and coordination equation is this penalty factor, which is dependent on the losses in the network. Okay. So penalty factor is important when we deal with a practical network. The losses the general formula for the loss equation, transmission loss equation is given by equation number 90. We'll be deriving this particular equation later. So P loss is equal to the summation of two summation PGI, BIJ, PGG, where BIJ is called as a loss coefficients, which are constants under certain assumed operating conditions. Okay. Under certain assumed operating conditions, these BIs are loss coefficients that are constants. So we have the exact coordination equation. In case of optimal scheduling with losses, we have the exact coordination equation, and the constraint equation, which is the generation should meet the demand less losses. So by using these two equations, we can solve for any problem based on losses, optimal scheduling based on losses. We'll deal one such problem. So the question is, a two-bus system as shown in figure. Okay, as shown in figure, and if a load of 125 megawatt is transmitted, 125 megawatt was transmitted from plant 1 to the load, a loss of 15.625 megawatt is incurred. Determine the generation schedule and load demand if the cost of received power is rupees 24 per megawatt hour. Solve the problem using coordination equation and penalty factor method. The incremental fuel cost is given by dF1 by dPg1. Functions for incremental fuel costs of the two units are given. Okay, so This is as in the question, it's mentioned about the losses. This is a optimal scheduling problem with including losses. So we have the loss PL. Loss PL. Now we can see from the network figure that the load is connected in bus 2. The load is connected at bus 2. So if a power is transmitted from bus 2 to the load, if a power is transmitted from bus 2 to the load, the power will be flowing directly from the generator to the load. It won't be flowing through this particular transmission line. Losses occur only when the power flow through a transmission line. So due to this power generation, that is due to this P2, there won't be any loss in the network. That means the power transmission loss will be dependent only on P1. Okay. Transmission loss will be only dependent on P1. Power generated from the first unit will be going through the transmission line to the, that is why it will be losses will be depending on P1. So we can say, since the load is at bus 2 alone, therefore the loss in the line will not be affected by generation of current. Therefore, PL is dependent on P1 only. As we had seen from the figure, from the expression here, from the expression P loss, if there are only 2 units, our expression will be sigma I is equal to 1 to 2 and sigma j equal to 1 to 2. PGI, BIJ, PGJ. That means we'll be getting it as B11 P1 square plus B22 P2 square plus 2 times B12 P1 This will be the equation for a 2-unit system, a system consisting of 2 units. Okay, this will be the equation for transmission loss for a system consisting of only 2 units. So this can be applied to our problem. So when we apply that to our problem, B12 will be equal to 0 and B21 will be equal to 0. Only term will be B11. So PL will be equal to B11 P1 square. And for finding out the loss coefficient B11, in the question it is given, if a load of 125, is megawatt is transmitted, that is, if this is 125, then a loss occurring is 15.625. So this is met only, this load is met, or losses is incurred only due to the transmission of P1. So P1 is taken as 125 and PL is the value 15.625. PL is the value, that is the loss, 15.625. So 15.625 is equal to B11 into P1 square, that is 125. by square. We'll get D11 as 0.011. And we can substitute this D11 in this particular expression for any generation. So we'll get the loss equation for any generation. PL is equal to, that is PL is equal to 0.01 P1 square. Okay. So we have the loss equation, and we have the loss equation. We have the incremental cost functions. Now we can apply the exact coordination equation. What is the exact coordination equation? Exact coordination equation is an incremental cost function that is equal to lambda into 1 minus incremental transmission loss, right? Incremental transmission loss. So incremental cost function is already given. We have the loss formula. We can find out the derivative of loss formula and find incremental transmission loss, that is dou PL divided by dou P1, which is 0.02 P1, and value of lambda, that is the received power, cost of the received power. It is given as 24. So value of lambda is also given in the question. So lambda is equal to 24. Substituting lambda equal to 24 and applying this incremental cost function and incremental transmission loss function, we'll get the value for P1. We'll get the value for P1. Okay. P1 is obtained as 123.28. So there is a value of P1 for optimal scheduling, including the losses. Now we have to find out the value for P2. So applying the same exact coordination equation, we'll get incremental fuel cost is equal to lambda as incremental transmission loss with respect to plant 2 is equal to 0. We get the equation as in this, and by solving we'll get P2 as 18. Okay, so substituting P1 and P2 as obtained, we'll get the value of transmission loss, that is 0.01, that is P11 into P1 square, this is square. P1 square is equal to, that is obtained as 15.19. So when the generation is 123.28 and 80 for units 1 and 2 respectively, the losses incurred is 15.19 megawatt. So we know the generation, we know the losses, we can find out the demand or the load. Load is equal to generation minus the losses. So we've got the demand. So that is how we've solved by using the coordination equation. We'll use the exact coordination equation along with the constraint. Okay. If lambda value is given, we need not use the constraint equation. Here in this question, lambda value was given. That is why we did not use the constraint equation. If we are using the penalty factor method, we know the penalty factor is 1 divided by 1 minus ITL, that is incremental transmission loss. Okay, so 1 divided by 1 minus incremental transmission loss is found out, and that into the incremental cost function will be equal to the lambda value. Okay, so here also we'll get the generation as 123.28 and similar fashion, we can find out the value for P2. That is obtained as 80 megawatt. Okay. So by using the penalty factor method, we'll find out the penalty factor, which is 1 divided by 1 minus incremental transmission loss, and substitute in the increment exact coordination equation and find the values. So those are the generations, and from the generation we can find out the demand. Now that we have the generation which is meeting the demand and loss, we had written a expression for the loss, but how can you obtain that particular expression? That is the transmission loss formula. Okay, so we'll find out the transmission loss formula. For that, I'm considering a network. In this particular network, I'll consider just one transmission line, say transmission line B. Okay, transmission line B. In this particular network, there are two units, unit number 1 and unit number 2. For the time being, let us consider that only unit 1 is meeting the load. Okay? Only unit 1 is meeting the load. The unit 2 is kept open. So when load is meeting the load, a portion of that current will be flowing through line B, and that is taken as IB1. And we are defining a factor MB1, that is current distribution factor, MB1, which is equal to 1 divided by IL, where IL is the total load connected to the network. So it is a portion of current flowing through B when unit 1 alone is connected, divided by the total demand. Okay. Similarly, for the when we consider the second unit alone is connected, keeping the first open, current will be flowing through the same transmission line B, and it is taken as IB2, and the current distribution factor can be written as IB2 divided by I. Okay, IB2 divided by I. Now, by applying superposition theorem, that is when we apply both the units simultaneously, there is a sum of all sum of the response from each unit independent. So IB, when both units are connected to the network, the current flowing in line B is equal to the current due to the first unit less the current due to the second unit. Okay. MB1 is the current distribution factor of unit 1, and I1 is the current generated from unit 1. Okay. MB2, the current distribution factor of unit 2, and I2, the current generated from unit 2. Then IB is equal to, IB is given by equation number 20. Whereas I1 and I2 are the current generated from unit 1 and 2 respectively. This current is actually a complex value. Okay. Before going into that, let us take some certain assumptions before deriving the loss coefficient. That is, the ratio of X by R of all the transmission line is same in this particular network, and the phase angle of all currents is the same. Phase angle of all current is the same. The net effect of these two assumptions is that load currents and branch currents are in phase. That is, IB1 and I1 will be in phase. As we had written here, this is a load current, IL is a load current, IL is the load current and IB is the branch current. So due to our assumption, IB and IL will be of same phase and MB1 and MB2 will be real. Okay. And but I1 and IB1 separately, when we are looking into, they are complex in nature. And those currents I1 and I2 can be written as I1 cos theta 1 plus J I1 sin theta 1. Similarly, I2 can be written. Okay. So when we substitute these complex values in a equation number 20, that is IB, we will get IB as MB1 into that complex I1 plus MB2 into complex value of I2. Now, the current I1. Current I1. Okay. Now, from equation number 21, we can separate the real and imaginary parts. When we separate real and imaginary part and finding out IB square, the magnitude IB square, we'll get the expression that is the cos square plus sine square term will be equal to 1, and will be having a term which is cos theta 1 into cos theta 2 minus sine theta 1 into sine theta 2, which is equal to cos theta 1 minus theta 2. Okay, choose cos theta 1 minus theta 2. So IB square will be obtained as in equation number 22. Here I1 and I2 are the current generated by units 1 and 2. If we know what is the power that is generated by unit 1 and what is the voltage at that particular bus, we can find out the current in terms of power and voltage. That is P, as we know, our system is a three-phase network, three-phase system. The current I1 can be written as P1 divided by root 3 V1 cos phi. Okay. So I1 is P1 divided by root 3 V1 cos phi 1, and similarly I2 can be written as P2 is equal P2 divided by root 3 V2 cos phi 2. Okay. So we have the current IB, which is the current flowing through the transmission line B. Okay. And if we know the resistance of that particular branch, we can find out the loss incurred by that particular branch, which is equal to IB square into RB. The loss in a transmission line is current square into resistance. But there is a three-phase system, so we have to put a 3 IB square RB is a loss in the branch B. But we have K number of branches in the system. So we have to add all those losses together. So PL is equal to summation B is equal to 1 to K 3 IB square RB. IB, as we had already obtained by equation number 22, we'll substitute in 22 the values P1. I1 is equal to P1 divided by 3 V1 cos phi 1, and I2 values will get expression for power loss as in equation number 23. Okay. So if we are comparing this equation 23 with the equation that we had already discussed, we'll get.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, we are almost time to wind up the session.
Okay.
Can you please conclude this particular topic, this session?
Yeah, I'll conclude with this slide.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So we have the loss equation, transmission loss formula as equation number 23. if we compare with the equation that we had already discussed, we can get the loss coefficients and B22 and B written. B11 will be the term 1 by B1 square cos square phi 1 into sigma MB1 square R. Similarly, B2 and B1. So those are the loss coefficients for a system having 2 units. We can write the equations for a system having n number of units. So that concludes the economic operation of power system. We had discussed the optimal scheduling with losses and without losses, as well as the transmission loss. There is a portion that is remaining, which is unit commitment. I have already made the slides in unit commitment. Actually, there are certain theories regarding those unit commitment. You can actually read those slides and understand what is unit commitment and
Yes, ma'am. We
the
will.
constraints regarding the unit. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot for uh, handling the session. Actually, it was a very detailed session, and time is very limited. We have only 1 hour. So, dear students, the whole condensed the PPT will be available in our ASAP website.